All right. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining another 4DMethod 4D user group. Today is December 1st, 2022. This is a special meeting where we take a look at an upcoming product release that's happening. It's not a normal meeting that we have with more news and whatnot from 4D, so it will be mostly the good stuff. So this is meeting number 61. I'll just introduce myself real quick and get right to it. My name is Brent Raymond. I organize these meetings, and the website that where we use to catalog all the meetings and get news about what's happening with 4DMethod is 4DMethod.com. You can also email me at 4dmethod@gmail.com. My usual spiel for what the user group is. We're trying to bring everyone together who uses and develops 4D, and we use Zoom to do this to make it easy for everyone. All the meetings are recorded, and the past presentations from people are recorded. There's just a lot of great content in the YouTube channel. I often find myself going back and watching presentations because there's often things that I missed. We're just trying to provide a new outlet and new content and a way for really everyone to feel more comfortable to share what they're doing and share their code and do stuff like this, release products. Like I mentioned, this is not your standard 4DMethod meeting. We do have another one scheduled on December 14th, where we'll be having Eric Louis from 4D talking to us about deploying across platforms. They've come up with a lot of changes over the years to facilitate deployment of your applications, built servers and whatnot, he'll be going through some of the recent changes and best practices for deploying across different platforms. We also have several dates open in 2023 for you guys to jump in and show something, namely February 1st, March 22nd, May 10th. You can always see those open dates at 4dmethod.com/schedule. And also take a look at a list of all the previous meetings. So that's they're all collected there and will continue to be collected on the schedule page. Okay. On to the good stuff here. Earlier this year, Aparajita joined us to give us a tour of his new component, js.component. He was working on at the time earlier in the year and has been working on, I think, for quite some time, that introduces several popular JavaScript libraries that he ported to 4D. There was so much interest in those meetings in March that we had a second meeting to continue and keep looking at the component itself. Those demos are definitely worth a look if you are completely new to the component, because there is simply too much functionality to include in an hour. Certainly, most of probably what we discussed in those meetings, you may not see again, because there's so much new that Aparajita is added in the meantime. If you're interested in a more thorough introduction of the man himself and his lengthy career in development and creation of tools and libraries for 4D, like object tools and active 4D, please refer to those earlier meetings so we can save time for him today. So since the demos in spring, he's been hard at work adding even more functionality and creating an extensive site to document the component language. Even if you don't give the component a try itself, the documentation is really worth a look, if for no other reason than for how to document a tool correctly. It's immediately apparent what a gigantic undertaking the component and the documentation itself is, just by even looking at that. I've tried the component myself, and it's incredibly extensive and adds a lot of great functionality and sort of missing techniques and commands from the 4D language. In fact, the Art Institute of Chicago, where I work as a captive developer, is an early adopter of JS component, and we are currently working with it in our application that tracks artworks and exhibitions and shipments and media and such things for the museum. But I'll defer to Aparajita to give you more information, as I'm sure there will be plenty about the component and the included training. So I'll hand it over to him now. Welcome back to the 4DMethod user group.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. And yeah, special thanks to Brent for being so indulgent with me. It's funny, I went back and looked at an email that I sent to him after the second demo in March. I said, yeah, I'll be releasing it in about 2 weeks. I just need to write a little documentation. So here we are. What is it? That was March. So this is now 8 months later. And I've added a lot of functionality and spent a month at least writing the documentation. If you haven't looked yet, I'm going to share my screen now. So if you haven't yet looked, you'll want to look at js.component.info. And so I have extensive documentation for everything in the component. Everything's hyperlinked. It's, let's see, I don't need, it's searchable. And I made a point of doing it in the same format as 4D's documentation, so it will be very familiar. And yeah, lots of examples, and it's all hyperlinked. So hopefully this will help you navigate around the component. So what is JS component? Well, I basically distilled 30 years of object-oriented programming experience, 20 years of JavaScript experience, 10 years of experience working in the Node ecosystem into this component. And so if you're wondering why I'm charging so much money, it's because it's basically, it's like a brain dump into this one thing. This is, you know, I've been doing developer tools for over 30 years for 4D, and I honestly feel this is the most significant thing I've ever done in terms of what it adds overall to 4D in terms of extending its functionality. I don't think I've ever seen anything. I'm not bragging, this is just an observation. I don't think I've seen anything that adds as much significant fundamental functionality to 4D, filling in holes that aren't there, as this. And it's, the code itself is all built. It's like I started with low-level utilities and built from there. And now half of the code that's in there is just using itself. And it's made me incredibly productive. Like I added a complete locale system, internationalization in like 3 days, because I'm so productive now with this component. Okay, so how many of you, here's the big question, how many of you were at the previous demos? I want to know how much.
I was.
Well, I know you were,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
okay. How do I see? I can't see everyone.
There's a raise hand feature. There's one raise hand there. I got, yeah, there we go. Clapping. You can also just unmute and say,
yeah,
yeah, I was there.
I was there.
I saw it happen.
Oh, there's the, okay, there's the first participants. Okay.
I was there.
So it looks like,
I was there.
wow, so actually a lot of you weren't. All right. Okay, well, this is going to be a very lightning tour, and there's a reason why training is included in the price, and it's not separable, because there's just no way that you could really get the most out of this without me spending like 8-10 hours guiding you through the whole thing and how to get the most out of it. It's really monstrous in a good way. It's just so big. I mean, you know, just this one module Lodash itself has all this stuff. Okay, it's going on, and get the most out of this. Even just, so let me start, I'll show you, I'll show you a couple of the basic utilities. So now it's a component. It's just a component like any other. So I'm just gonna make a symbolic link to that. Move that into components in my database. Restart the database. And if we look at the Explorer, there it is. So the vast majority of the of the functionality in JS component is in classes. So there's only this very small number of global methods. So you don't have to worry about namespace collisions. And most of the functionality, a lot of it you're going to get to through this underscore. And so for example, here's a simple thing. Let's look at some of the basic utilities. One of the fundamental ones is one called toString. And why is this important? Well, because, you know, well, big deal. So let's, I mean, 4D can do that. So what? But I can throw anything at this. I can throw, well, actually, you can't throw a number. You can't, I can make a blob. Let's say blob gets, what is it, blob to text?
Or text to blob, yeah.
Text to blob, right. Text to blob. Hello, blob, and I want UTF text without length. And I can just put that in there. And it's smart enough to see it's a blob. And it assumes if it's UTF text without length, then it just does the conversion for you. So you can throw anything at this, anything at toString, and it'll convert it. If I throw, and everything, so as I said, JS component is an integrated framework. And so one thing toString does is if a class, let me make a class here. If a class has a toString function, let's make a new class.
I noticed that in the date time class.
Yeah, so if we make a class, and it actually takes a format, an optional format, and it returns text. So toString, if it sees an object and that object has a toString property, which is a function, it will execute that. So if I say foo get cs.foobar.new, and actually let's make this a little smarter. Okay, and then okay. So so if I look at this, let's just trace there and look at foo, and okay, so and now if I call toString, it's not going to work. Yes, thank you. Oh, I have to pass it. Yeah, might help to pass the right thing. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so so it's a framework. It's, you know, it's a coherent framework. So, and it's totally extensible. So in your own classes, if you add a toString function, then you can return something. And then why is that important? Well, because let's just say, let's just return the name. Okay. Take this trace out. Okay, so let's say I want to say hello plus toString foo plus all right, well, that's wonderful, but you know, having to string together things like this, you're used to it now, but once you start getting into complicated concatenations of strings, it becomes really hard to see what exactly, you know, is going on. If let's say I've got like, let's say I even had to do something like, you know, if there were like, let's see, today is, okay. And then we had a period. See if this works. Okay. So tell me, looking at this real quickly, can you see what's going on? I can't. So every other language but 4D basically has something called template strings or interpolated strings. So building on toString, I have one of the most useful utilities that js.component has is format. And format takes a template. So I'm going to replace this with a placeholder, and this will be, it'll be the first placeholder. So I'm going to move that to the end. And then the second one is that. So this becomes today is, and then this, I put in the second placeholder, and now this should work. So what is this doing? So it's, if it sees any placeholders which are in the format, you know, like this, then it replaces this with the first, that's be the first parameter, the second parameter. They don't have to be in order. I could do 2 and 1, and I can repeat them. You can do whatever you want. Hang on one second. Spam call. Yeah. So, so let's try that. And there we go. Okay. Well, so we want to format the date. But you know, remember, so now format under the hood is calling toString. Okay. So I don't actually have to say toString here to pass to this parameter. I can just pass it directly. because under the hood, it to format is passing whatever this placeholder, whatever this parameter is to underscore to string. Okay. And likewise, I don't need to do a string current date because toString is going to stringify date. Now, obviously, we would like to have some formats. So if we put a vertical bar, then we can put a format. So in the case of date formats, it has to be the numeric format, I'm going to guess. Anyone know? Let's just try 2. See what happens. There we go. Okay. So I hope you can see how powerful this is, because now you see exactly what this string is, exactly how it's built. Now you can pass either positional parameters. You could also, this could also be an object. And then this would, then these would be the property names. Okay. And you can also pass a collection, and then these become the zero-based indexes into the collection. So this is an example how everything in JS component, like every function I've tried to make not only as functional as possible, but as flexible as possible. So there's multiple ways. So if, like, you know, you take a look at, we take a look at format. Where is it? In string format. So the parameters can be, there's like a million different ways, like as we'll see later with datetime. I've given you, you know, like the constructor has like 5 different ways of creating a datetime. So everything I tried to make as flexible as possible. Okay. So, so there's even one step further I've taken it. So instead of having to even do format and all this with alerts, since doing an alert of a formatted string is very common, I've got my own low-dash alert, and the first parameter can be is just a string as usual, but if it's a template string, and then you pass more parameters, it passes that to format. So I don't have to use format at all. I just say alert, pass the template string, the parameters, boom, done. Any questions so far?
No, but I think it's important to note that you know, it's very difficult to encapsulate how much functionality there is, and you know, this is just a wouldn't even call it a drop in a bucket. You know, this is just a tiny little taste of style more than anything. And you know, one of the biggest things that this kind of can do for you is you know, some amount of familiarity with people, you know, other developers who know other languages like JavaScript can come in, and this sort of style is a lot more is easier for their eyes to read, and they can more quickly become productive and can contribute quicker to your projects.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
You said that if there was a toString function for your class, that it would use that. We're using
Yes. Yeah.
How do you know that a class has one of those functions? Do you have to just actually parse the?
No. Well, I have okay, so now I have, for debugging, I have something called inspect. which gives you a debug representation of whatever you pass to it. So if I've got another utility called responds to, and does foo respond to toString? And the answer is yes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, all response to is doing is it's saying, okay, is the parameter an object? Does that parameter have a property, this property, and is the type of that, and is that property an object? And if it is an object, is its class 4D.function?
Oh, okay. 4D.function. Okay.
That's how I know.
Ah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I did not know you could do that with 4D.
Can
You
do
could
that.
actually ask it that.
You actually can do that. But I make it easy for you. Instead of having to do all that long testing, you just say responds to, right? So that makes it really easy to do all this stuff. And that's what I'm saying. It's like I built all this stuff that makes using 4D sort of the clunky parts of 4D way, way, way easier. Regular expressions. Okay, here's an example. So we all know, we may or may not know about match regex. And match regex is great to have, but it's extremely cumbersome to use if you have multiple. It's like if you're just testing if it matches something, well, that's easy. But if you want to actually have capture groups, if you want, and there's no replacement. So I have a whole set of regular expression utilities. I'm going to save this example for later when we get to localization, which Guy and any Europeans will appreciate. So, what was I saying? Yes, regular expressions. So let's say I want to find all of the occurrences of foo or bar in a string. So let's say string is, this is a test of foo and foo bar. And I want to know, I want to capture all of the occurrences of foo or bar. So let's do regex match. And by the way, there is yes, there is full IntelliSense for JS component. So regex match, and what are my parameters? Well, the patterns. So my pattern is going to be foo or bar. And then I give it the string, which is S, and the type. Well, if I just do this by default, let's see what we get. So by default, so what inspect does is it takes anything you pass to it, and it tries to give you an intelligent debug representation of that object, of that value. So in the case of a collection, I show you a nice, pretty printed version of the collection, and objects also as well. So by default, regex max is just going to give me the first match. Okay, so I just got the first one, and it tells me the index within the string. Well, I want to know all of them. So I have to tell it, okay, the type is A. And now I get back all of the matches. But I need to, let's see. I want to, now let's say, there's also, I think there's a G. Yeah, and then there's, so you can look it up. It's all here. I mean, there's so much stuff here, I can't even remember everything. Let's see, regex max. So there's different types. If it's G, a collection is returned with all the complete matches, no capture groups are returned. If it's A, as a collection returned the one item for each complete match, right? So if you don't know regular expressions, you definitely want to learn them. Is there a function? Wait. Well, oh yeah, Steve. No, this is 100%. So Steve is saying, and my fear, yes, it's third-party code. Well, no, actually, this is 100% 4D code. It can never be, and you have full access to the source, so it can never become obsolete. So you don't have to worry about that.
Is this just a wrapper for the 4D regex command?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
Just
just,
a wrapper for that.
yeah, I mean, under the hood here, I mean, I'll show you what it's doing under the hood. Whereas utility regex, I mean, under the hood, it's doing a whole ton of stuff. I mean, it's using match regex, but it's doing a whole ton of stuff to format the results.
I would say one of the great benefits of having access to the component is the source code, because of how well it's architected, and how much how far he's pushed the language, and implemented best practices in the class structures and whatnot. It's a real master's class in itself, just to look at the code.
Yeah, and it's also a good example of how to use JS component, because I'm using the component itself all over the place. You can see there's a lot of underscore dots. So, I end up using very few 4D commands other than real basics. So is there a function to determine if a class has already been instantiated? You mean whether a variable that's been declared?
No, I mean, I have a global method that needs to call in a loop some code. Some of it is classes. Within those classes, there's a constructor, and within the constructor, there is initialization of other classes.
Right.
So if it ends up in a loop.
Okay, so yeah, so what you want, all right.
Singleton.
So that's okay, so that's where you get the singletons, right? Exactly. 10 points, Brent.
Thank you. No, that is
Thank you.
I mean, that is an
Yeah, it's not in
awkward
use
thing.
yet, and I know it's bad. But I
Yeah,
want-
no, he's been paying attention. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you want singletons. So what is a singleton? A singleton, let's see, class.
There's been a lot, over a year's worth of chat on the 4D
Sure.
forum about how to do this right, and
Yeah,
So a singleton is it's a class that is only meant to be instantiated once. And so JS component uses singletons extensively, and they're incredibly useful. So that's one way I was able to hide all this code without having a million public methods. And that's because I stuck almost all the functionality into singleton classes. So what does the singleton do? So let's say I want to make this a singleton. And usually singletons do not take anything in the constructor. But they do have functionality. So here's a place where I would like to use format. I'm not going to bother for now. Okay, so let's make this into a singleton. All right. So, so we say register singleton, and I just give it the, actually, no, all I have to do is, yeah. I just say instance. So, if you want to always make sure, who was asking?
I was
I don't see who I is.
Joshua.
Josh, okay, Josh. So, so you would say, instance cs.foobar dot say hello.
Yeah, and this is something that you run into really fast if you start making your own custom classes. Is it just kind of doesn't feel like it makes sense to have to instantiate them every time you want to use that functionality. It's not like running a method where
Right.
there's overhead.
Yeah, but this is specifically for classes that are never meant to be instantiated more than once.
Right.
Yeah, so
Within a given process, you mean?
no, ever. It's
Period.
global. It's global to the
Oh.
entire application.
It's in
Okay.
storage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in storage. Yeah, that's the point. This is like, this is something that's meant to be. So, and I'll show you in a moment why that, one of the reasons I did this. But by the way, inspect, one of the nice things about inspect is if it's a string, it puts quotes around it, so you know it's a string, which alert does not do. So now it's kind of a pain if we want to say instance every time. So I have this, I have a convention I use, which is I make project method with the name of the class, which you actually can do with the same name. And all that does is return instance cs.foobar. So now, instead of having to say instance all the time, I can just say foobar. And because it's actually declared, it should be. So this effectively lets me treat this as like the what's called the static. Now in 4D gave us classes, but unfortunately they did not give us one of the key elements of classes, which is called static. And so we all know about instance functions and class functions, which belong to a particular instance, but in most other languages, they also have what are called static properties and static methods. This is what I love about 4D, that 4D calls methods functions and functions methods. That's what everyone else calls functions. 4D calls methods and vice versa. So, so this lets me create sort of fake static properties and methods for the foobar class. So I treat this as if this is a static function on the foobar class. If 4D actually had statics, it would be like that.
Okay.
But it
Now,
doesn't.
what if I have a situation where I want that class to be initialized, but only if it's a separate process? Yeah, do I have the ability to do that?
Only if it's a separate process.
Then it's not a singleton, is it?
Well, it's not a singleton then.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just use the process variable, have an object,
Yeah, I mean, you would
an
just,
instance of your class?
yeah, I mean, you just in your process, in the method that starts the process, you just create that instance there, make a process variable. Yeah.
Okay,
So if it's specific to a process, yeah, just instantiate it and stick it in a process variable. But this is meant for something that's global. But it's also a way to add static functionality to a class that is also instantiated. So actually, typically what I would do is I would actually call this class, I would rename this foobar static. And then the class that is instantiated per instance would be foobar. So, so statics let you, they let you add, for instance, let's say if you have instance functions, class functions within your instance class that want to refer to constants, and those constants are used across every instance. Well, instead of incurring the cost of initializing those constants in every single time you make an instance of the class, I put it in the static. So I would say, let's say, constructor, come on, you can type. This dot, I don't know, this dot greeting is hello. Let's make it a template, why not? There we go. Say hello, and it'll be, and this I will move to foobar. Return. Foobar dot, let's see, actually I call this just plain greeting, foobar dot greeting. This dot name. Okay. Let's just show it. Okay, you understand? So I'm storing this constant because I'm using this constant. And this is a trivial example, but I've got, for example, like in my daytime static, I've got like all this stuff that's, that I don't want to have to instantiate on every single time I make a daytime.
right. Could
So
the constant be a
there's like
class?
global data. There's all this global
Yeah.
data that's being used by all the instances.
Right. Could the
Yeah.
constant be a class also?
The constant can be whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean, it's just a property. I mean, these are just properties on a class, and I'm just referencing that singleton instance of that class through, I'm effectively saying instance CS foobar static. Okay. But I simplify that by just making that method that returns that for me. So let's see if this works. So if I say, oops, foobar, cs.foobar.new, I give it the name. And let's look at foo.sayhello, right? There we go. So, oh, right, because I already did an alert. Yeah, I already did.
In one
So
last question.
now if I change this, that's the beauty of it. If I just change this, right? So this is globally now. I've changed it for all instances. So let's make another one here. Okay, there's Brent. Ah, right. Okay, so now what did we run into? So so one thing I have to do when I change a static,
It's just a misspelling. You just have an extra L.
yeah, but I also have to, but when I change a static, see, it still just says hello, Brent, right? It didn't change the greeting to how are you? Why? Because I've got a cached version of that static class, instance of that static class in storage. So I have to unregister so that the next time I call instance, it will create it anew. And you only have to do this during development when you're changing stuff. So now that I under-register that, and now the next time I call instance, it creates a new instance of foobar static, which has the new greeting.
Okay. I just have one last question.
Mhm.
Is there a function for determining in runtime if a class has been initialized?
If a class has been initialized,
Yes.
you mean as static class?
No, not a static class.
There's a 4D command instance of that you can say, is this particular?
No, I think you're asking if I mean, what's the context?
Well, okay. Let's say I have two separate classes, and within the constructor of each of those classes, there's an initialization of another class so that it can have access to those functions.
Right.
And I don't know when those two classes may be instantiated. So when I instantiate class number 2, should that happen, I don't want to reinstantiate the same class within the constructor that was already instantiated.
Yeah, but that's so.
That's just
It
another
sounds
way
like
of
it.
saying
I
what you
mean,
already
it's.
did.
I mean, it sounds like a singleton.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so if it's a
Okay.
singleton, you just use instance.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the point of instance, is that it lazy instantiates, right? It does lazy instantiation of.
Okay. Yeah, so it can do it on the fly.
Does it on the
It's
fly. That's the thing. You
once.
never have to think about it.
Right.
So
Okay. So that's the question.
yeah, it does lazy instantiation, and Jesus,
That answers the question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Zoom is adding so much junk here. I can't even see what's going on.
All the panels, yeah.
Yeah.
There was another question from Steve, maybe a dumb question, but how is the static, the static type of class different?
How is it
from-
different than storage?
Yeah.
Well, because it's being put. The point is that it's the static is in storage. It's an instance of a class that is in storage, but there's all this complicated stuff because you have to copy. You're instantiating a non, because we can't say new shared we can't say new shared. We can't say cs.foo.new shared, right? When we say new, we have a non-shared object. So to put that in storage, you have to say ob copy ck shared, and then copy it to somewhere in storage. So that's what instance does for you. But in addition, sometimes there's like complicated stuff that the constructor does that OB copy will choke on. So one thing instance register singleton does is it checks to see if there is a class function called init shared. And if there is, it calls that, because sometimes there are cases where, like I had to do that with my datetime static. If I tried storing all of this, using OB copy on this, it choked. So I had to wait until I had copied. So I had to wait until I've copied, made a shared copy of the instance of this class, put it into storage, then I call init shared, and then I have to say use this, and then I'm, and it's like, so there's all this, believe me, there's all this complicated stuff around it. When you start putting class instances into storage, it becomes pretty complicated. So I've tried to simplify all that for you.
I'm glad you did all the hard work. Okay, so we have to go
Did all the
through.
hard work, trust me.
Yeah.
I got quite a few extra gray hairs doing it.
Yeah, storage and shared together. You'd think you just do it, but it ends up
Yeah,
breaking.
no, yeah. Don't get me started on shared objects versus
Well-
non-shared. Anyway, so I mean, at least, I'm grateful to all of you, to all those people who voted on some of my pet peeves on the forum and got 4D to fix them. Like, you can pass a non-shared object to use and it doesn't barf, right? So we got them to do that.
That's recent. That's R5, R6, isn't it?
That was R5, yeah. Yeah, and in R5 also we got copy parameters, which you all voted for. Thank you very much. After I asked you to in March, and that was essential. That's like, that made JS component so much easier to do. Anyway, let me move on. What other key, so regular expressions. So I was showing you regular expressions. Regex replace, I tell you, you can conquer the world with regex replace. Right, I had all this stuff with changing foobar, right? Let's see if I can get back to that. Should have just commented that out. There we go, okay. All right, well, that's wonderful. But let's say I want to replace all instances of foo and bar, right, with baz. So let's do regex replace, and this now becomes the replacement, which can be a static string. Okay. So now I've replaced foo or bar with baz. But this can also be a formula, which gets passed. What does it get passed? It gets passed the match substring, it captures for the current match, a collection, one based offset, the whole string being examined. Okay. So let's say I want to say like, I want to say 1 plus, I don't know. Why not? And we can even do this. Let's use good old format. And we want to make sure that's a time. And this will be actually 2, and this will be 1. That's 1, and this is current time. Okay, so what is this doing? Good question. So what I'm saying here, so regex replace, every time it finds an either foo or a bar, it's going to pass the matched substring, which will either be foo or bar, in $1. And I just return the replacement. And so I'm saying, okay, I'm going to return the original match substring, which will be either foo or bar, followed by a colon, followed by the current time. Let's see if it works. There we go. Very exciting. Very useful. But trust me, you know, you can work wonders. I mean, regex replace is just incredibly powerful. And if this were in a class, okay, let's do this here. And I'm going to pass in the match. And I'm going to return that. And then this becomes, now here I have to do a little trick. And I'm passing in the match substring. This is text, reference text. All right, so what am I doing? So in the formula is going to call the class function replacer and pass to it $1, which is the match substring. So why do you have to do the $this? Well, because within a formula, this is refers to if I say f gets formula this, then within this formula, this is actually that. Okay, so I can't use, if I want to refer to the current instance of the class, I have to capture it in a local variable. So that's why I use $. That's why I'm using that. And again, this is all part of the training. These are important things. You'll learn all kinds of stuff about formulas you never knew and probably never want to know. So let's see if this works. We've got our foo, and then we're going to say hello. And this is just, yeah, that's alerting it. Oh, it's undefined. Oh, right. Duh. Try calling it. Foo.say hello. Oh, yeah, I always do 3 L's. Yeah. There we go. So this is like incredibly powerful. Once you start learning regex replace, it's just phenomenal. What you can do. Yeah.
So, yeah, I have another question, but it's about training. Is it slightly customizable in terms of, the emphasis?
The training?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll definitely, will give, I mean, there's aspects of it that I definitely have to show everyone.
Yeah, okay.
But there'll be a question and answer period,
Okay.
on every day. So you'll have a chance to cover more stuff that,
The reason I ask is that the system that I'm working with right now I've developed it as an API gateway. There is zero user interface.
right.
And so data
Well, there's nothing, almost nothing
manipulation,
here that relates that, I mean, the vast majority of JS component doesn't, the only thing that has anything to do with user interface is alert. Basically, that's it. Everything else is
okay,
just
great,
functionality.
because everything I do is about REST. It's about data manipulation. Yeah, that's really it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's asking how much. It's
A lot of cleaning.
yeah, no, it's all just pure programming joy. That's the whole point, is to make you more
Awesome.
productive as a programmer. It has nothing to do with UI.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I will answer the price question at the end.
What's your main, Aparajita, what's your main usage for JS component in your actual, job?
Well, the thing is, I don't actually write 4D code for a living. I write JavaScript code and other stuff for a living. Sometimes, but I have had to write, when I do write 4D code, I'm like, I have to make this a better experience. So, I originally wrote this was based on a bunch of stuff I did for my main client. And I, in the process of having to write a big ton of functionality for their 4D database, I just wrote a bunch of utilities to make things easier, and that became the seed for JS component.
So there's actually, this actually is in use right now, a kind of a previous version.
No, not really. No,
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
not really.
well, a very primitive form of it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the techniques here with this code library can be translated to JavaScript programming because they're essentially JavaScript functions, correct? Or very similar.
In most cases, it was the other way around. I mean, I've taken almost everything in JS component from the JavaScript world and ported it to 4D.
Right.
Like for example, let's say I've got a string. A simple thing you want to do, you want to pad a string, right? Well, how do you do it? Okay, well, it's easy. Pad start. What does it take? The string. Let's say you want to pad a number. To 3, to 3 spaces. So this pad start, I literally I went here to the JavaScript documentation, and then they said, oh, here's a polyfill. So I went to the polyfill, and where is it? So I went to the, let's see. Yeah, so basically I just went here and implemented this. I just ported this code to 4D. So, that's.
So a lot of functionality in here is actually direct JavaScript code being ported into 4D.
A lot of it is JavaScript code either being directly ported, or I used the same API and just reverse engineered it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but
syntactically, And in terms of the
Yeah,
terminology,
syntactically, any JavaScript programmer will be very comfortable.
but some of us like myself who don't do JavaScript but have an interest in it might find this an interesting
Yeah.
education into doing JavaScript later, true?
Exactly. This will make it a lot
Excellent.
easier.
I like
Yeah.
that.
So, I mean, first of all, just even the underscore, using like underscore. Let's get back to here. Just even using underscore. Well, why did I do that? Why is it called Lodash? Well, because one of the, like the most popular utility library for JavaScript is called Lodash. and it's just got like millions and billions of utility functions. And that was like the inspiration. They must have a site. No? Yes, they do somewhere. And you know, here we go, docs, here we go. So this was the inspiration for my Lodash. And why is it called Lodash? Because there was, Lodash was like a better version of a previous library that was called underscore. And they also wanted to use the underscore, but they couldn't say, call it underscore because that name had already been taken. So they called it Lodash.
Yeah. Well, one of the advantages that I can see, aside from the functionality, which is huge, that like, for example, on our team, we have somebody who is, you know, I handle the back end, somebody else is handling the front end, which is web-based. He's a JavaScript programmer, I'm not. If I adopt this, we can, and learn this, we can start to work in each other's world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Common vocabulary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing.
That's huge.
I have taken everything that I could possibly port from the JavaScript world and put it into, you know, ported it to the 4D world.
Right. But just from
including not just things like pad start, but
right.
techniques and ways of structuring classes and everything, right?
But just the techniques, the common vocabulary, that alone is a huge productivity enhancer for when he needs to work in the back end or I need to work in the front end.
Yeah.
It's just huge.
Yeah. So, you know, and as much as possible, when I ported stuff from the JavaScript world, I tried to stick exactly to the specifications. So for example, if you look at my regex replace, these substitutions here are exactly the same as what JavaScript does. So you know, I've tried to make it as much like JavaScript as possible.
That's great.
Yeah.
What about your date time class?
Okay, so yeah.
Are months 0 based or 1 based?
1 based.
Thank you for
like
not.
they should have been in JavaScript.
Okay, thank you for doing it the 4D way and not doing
Well,
it.
I also just did it the way that makes sense to normal human beings. So, all right. So, any more questions before I move on? Let's see. Okay, so datetime. Well, since you mentioned datetime, one of the main things I did since March was I added a datetime class, and this is incredibly significant for many, many different reasons, especially for those of you who deal with different languages and different time zones. Just to have a date and a time in one object is a huge thing. So let's say, let's get a date time here. Whoop, js.datetime. There we go. Okay. cs.js.datetime.new. So what is that going to give me? Let's do an inspect and see what it gives us. And then we'll do a plain alert. Oh, let's reverse that. Okay. So it captures current date, current time with milliseconds, and the time zone offset from UTC. That's
Nice.
all stored in the datetime, and there it all is. So here's a case where inspect is giving me an intelligent the debug representation of an object. And
Great.
now inspect is also extensible. So what inspect does under the hood, it actually, if a class has a description function, then let's see, let's do it this way. Let's see, return. I think yeah, it puts the class name at the top. So what the heck, I'll put I am root and this dot name. All right, so inspect intelligently tries to give you a debug representation of whatever you pass to it. If you pass it an object, the object has a description property, which is a function. It calls that function. So if I do here.
But is Brent baby
Brent
Groot,
is-
or
Brent
is
is-
Brent full-grown
Brent-
Groot?
No, Brent was the instance, was the,
I'm messing with you.
yeah, Brent is Groot. Yes, Brent is Groot.
Yes.
Not baby Groot. Got it.
Not baby Groot. Okay. So again, this is like incredibly powerful because if you, any of your classes, if you make a description function, then that really helps you in debugging. Okay. And by the way, and then description, if description inspect, it looks for description. If description is not defined, it looks for toString. So if you don't need a separate debug representation, then a stringified version of your instance, you can just define toString, and inspect will use that as well. So if I just make that toString, inspect will use that as well. Except that it shows it as an object, yeah. Oh, wait, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. toString, interesting, okay. Okay, datetime. So we've captured the date, the time, milliseconds, UTC offset. I actually even know the time zone abbreviation and the time zone name. So
What is mode? What does mode mean?
well, I'll get to that. So of course I can, I don't always want, and by the way, there's a shortcut to this. I can say datetime.now. Because that's a common thing. Instead of having saying cs.js.datetime.new, you just say datetime.now. So of course I can pass the date. And that will give me current date with no time. And of course I can pass the time. So today's thing started at 12 noon CST. All right, so let's get a better format for this. So one thing I did is I ported this JavaScript, all the functionality of this JavaScript library, the formatting from this JavaScript library to 4D. So we've got a format command, which takes a whole ton of different tokens. And so I want day name, the weekday name, the long month name, the day, yeah, and then I want the time. So I can say at, which is, you'll see, is a localizable token for the word at in English. And I want the time. Let's do it in AM PM version format. There we go. So let's just I don't need to inspect anymore. Okay. So actually, I don't want that. And I would like to have the ordinal version, DO, December 1st at 12 p.m. Very nice. Or I could do lowercase AM PM. Now, I want it in now daytime is always in your local time zone when you create it. But let's say, okay, I knew this meeting started at 12 noon CST. Well, I don't want to have to figure out what that is my time. So I've got no milliseconds and I just tell it, okay, this was Central Standard Time in America, Chicago. And one thing I've done is I have ingested, I have an ingester, which is open source, which you can get off GitHub, which grabs the list of time zones from Wikipedia, which is itself is taken from the official time zone database. And I ingest that and I turn it into a big JSON file. And then I read that into daytime static class. And I also, I give you an Excel spreadsheet so you can look this stuff up. So, but this is basically the database I'm using internally. So I can see what the abbreviations are, what the time zone offsets are, and importantly, what the names are. Okay, so what I'm telling it here is, okay, I want to create a date that's on December 1st at noon in this time zone. Now, all I'm telling it is that, well, this date and time refers to this time zone, but the date and time is still going to be, that it creates is still going to be in my local time zone. So it's going to translate, it's going to look up in the database, okay, under America, Chicago, CST, what's the time zone offset? It's -6, and then adjust the time accordingly. Internally, daytime is storing UTC time. And then when you ask for any local times, it converts to local time. So now this will correctly show me that it's December 1st at 10 a.m. my time, Pacific Standard Time. Now, let's say you're in Guy, you're in Montreal, right? Where are you? Still with us? Any Europeans here? Want to tell me where you are?
Spain.
Yeah,
Spain.
no,
Spain, where in Spain?
Berlin, Germany is also.
La Coruña, but probably Madrid. Try Madrid.
Madrid. Let's see if we have Madrid. Yes, we do. Europe, Madrid. Okay, CET. So change this to CET. Europe, Madrid. And lo and behold, there we go. Oh my God, it's 3 a.m. your time.
No, here it's in the evening, so something's weird. It's like 8 in the evening here, so
Uh,
Do you have to put in local?
you put in
oh yeah,
12
right.
o'clock,
It's my time. It's 3. Yeah, right.
right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, okay. So that's important. Okay. So it's, yeah, that's, if it had been at noon your time, it would have been 3 a.m. for me. So, okay. So here's where localization comes in. So we know that it was at 12 noon CST. Okay. So now let's say you want to see it in your time zone. So you just say .tz, CET, Europe, Madrid. And lo and behold, there we go.
Right, that's the right time.
Yep. So that's like, this is just insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, of course, it takes into account rollovers in dates. So let's say this actually had started at 8 p.m. CST. That would have been tomorrow at 3 a.m. Right? So, you know, of course, dates have add, there's subtract, difference, compare, is before, or same, is same or before, is after. Let's look at the docs here. It's huge. There's just tons and tons. And of course, you can access all of the individual properties. You can get the days, how many days are in a month. You can convert, you convert to all kinds of strings. And then there's all this time zone stuff and then internationalization. So, yeah.
If you're doing, if your standard is to use UTC, GMT times to store everything. So every place in your database, you're storing not local times, but UTC times.
Right.
No problem using this. This
Yeah,
will,
no, because yeah, so you want to store a timestamp.
Yeah.
So okay.
I may display it in different,
Yeah, you know, but in the database, you want to store timestamps.
Yes.
That's UTC. So you can initialize a date time with a timestamp.
Okay.
Okay. So that's how you, and then of course you can, when you store it, you'll want to do that. So you'll store the timestamp of the date time, which is UTC. And then when you read it back in, when you want to create a date time from the timestamp, you just pass the timestamp constructor. Do not attempt to save date time. Yeah, it's in the docs. Yes, thank you, Brent. Someone's reading the docs. Yes, I did make sure to, there's even a warning in the docs to make sure you're storing timestamps.
Yeah, I really appreciate some of the hints. Documentation is one thing, but then some of the tips and hints are invaluable.
Yeah. So, okay. So now for all you Europeans and people who are not in the US, what about, you don't want to show it in this. You've got different datetime formats, right? So, oh, by the way, so, well, one thing we can do is, again, this is showing how this is an integrated framework where it's all coherent, it's built on itself. I can, instead of having to say datetime format, and let's say I want to say the meeting starts plus. Okay. Well, this I would like this to be in a format.
Yeah.
Period after. I think that's correct. Don't need this. There we go. Okay. So, well, that's wonderful, but there's an even easier way. And I don't even have to use format separately. I can actually put that as the placeholder format. Why? Because internally, so internally alert is calling underscore format is taking this placeholder and calling toString. ToString is defined on my datetime class, and toString takes a format, and if the format is not empty, I pass it to the format function of datetime. So this essentially is getting passed through to dt.format. And, you know, the amazing thing was, so I did the datetime and I was like, and I did the format, and then I started building some tests, and I was like, oh man, it would be so great if I could just pass the datetime format through the templates as the format in the template string. And I started to think, okay, I have to special case my format, my underscore format code to look for a datetime. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm just calling toString. And so all I have to do is define toString in datetime to take the format and then call the datetime format. And lo and behold, that was all it took. So it's like everything just works together. And so if you have your own custom classes with your own custom toString, and you want to accept a format, you can put whatever the heck you want in here, and it just gets passed through. So, okay.
I have a question
Yes.
regarding daylight saving times. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, because I'm getting, you have to know whether you have to get this correct, okay? But I do account for daylight savings time. So let's say, because I'm calculating the UTC date, the time zone offset using the 4D. I'm using the trick of I format a date using ISO GMT, and just using ISO, and then I calculate the difference. And so that gives me the time zone offset. And so, so if I do a date, let's see, dt dot time zone. Yeah, let's do time zone. Let's do it this. Actually, I'll do an inspect. That'll make it easier. So let's say, let's do it. This is standard time. That'll just be midnight. So that'll be standard time. So it's Pacific Standard Time. Offset is -8. And now if we do something that's in the summer and daylight savings time, you'll see it's Pacific Daylight Time and it's -7.
Okay.
So it does know. And if I daylight savings time, hey Siri, when did daylight savings time end this year?
Daylight saving time starts on March 12, 2023 and will end on November 5th, 2023.
Okay, so daylight savings time, March 12th. So let's do 2023, March 12th, and it starts at 2 a.m. So let's do 02, let's do 01, 59, 59, right? And we're still in standard time. And as soon as I change this to 2, then it switches to daily savings time.
Very good.
And when you're doing add and subtract and all that stuff, it does take into account daylight savings time. So,
And this is all using the 4Ds.
Under the hood, I'm using add to date and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
using. So so ultimately, it's getting that information from the system.
Right, so the operating system, 4D is asking the operating system and it's giving it back and you're using that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So there's no tables or anything to look
No,
at.
no, no. It's coming from the operating system. Yeah. So that means even for historical dates in the past, it will be correct, hopefully, if the system has it correct. So now, even if I do an add to date, so like right now, it's standard. So if I do .add, I'm gonna add 0 years and 0 months, 0 days and 1 hour. It should work. Yeah. Let's see. 9. Oh, it did 9. Oh, 1 second. That was a second. Hang on a second. How does this work? Months or unit, various days, integer. Oh, time. Right. Sorry. It saw that as 1 second. Right. There we go. Okay. Pacific Standard. What is the time?
You might just need a trace out of it.
Yeah. Anyway, I will check on this.
But there's a different format where you can just say add 1 hour as a text.
Yeah.
I was playing with that.
Right. But that's incorrect. Yeah, I'm not.
Well, you haven't released it yet. You can still fix
That's
it.
right. I'm glad I found that. I will check into that. So, okay. So now for you Europeans and people outside of the US, Canadians, Europeans, obviously you're going to want to have localized date formats. So, let's go back to where we were. There we go. Yeah. Oh, let's go back a little farther. Okay. Let's see. So it's noon. Yeah. Okay. So we want to see this in a localized format. Okay. So I have an entire system of locales. So there is a locale class. It's actually a singleton. Okay. This is a singleton class that manages locales. And every locale is a text It is a text file that contains the localized information for your locale. And by default, I ship with, I'll get out of the way, Zoom. By default, I ship with all of these locales. If any of you want more, I can make them, but you can of course define your own. So these are the ones that it shipped that are built in. It ships with built-in locales that just have the basic datetime stuff. So you get, the weekday names, the short weekday names, minimum, all this stuff. At is like, that's the preposition before at a time, localized. And these are predefined localized formats: localized time a second, localized short date, localized date without time, localized date with time, short localized date with time, short localized, long localized date with time, long localized ordinal date with time, and then constituent. This is localized month, day and month, localized weekday, day and month, localized weekday, ordinal date and month. Okay, so you can build, so let's try. So we want to change, so instead of this, okay, this is going to become LL, actually, it's going to be localized weekday, day, ordinal, and month at localized time. And it's still English, okay? So let's load. We have to load. And again, locale is a function which, this is just, again, I created a global method which returns the instance of my singleton, just as a convenience. I could have said instance cs.js.locale. That's a lot more difficult to do. So I just say locale.load. Let's load German. Let's load French, Canadian French. Sorry, that's Swiss. There we go. And now, so that's English. Well, what if I want to change this to, let's say I want to change this to German. Say loc or locale, either way. Loc is just a shortcut. Just say DE. There we go. And if I change it to French Canadian, and now one thing locales do is they have a fallback. So let's say I say French whatever, something that doesn't exist, or I haven't, that, so the way these language tags work, if you never work with them, it's like the language, then there's a region, and there can even be, after that, there can be a dialect. So there's like DE Bavarian or something like that. I think there's such a thing. So what it does is when you ask for a certain locale, let's say, for example, so if I ask for French, Swiss French, and I haven't loaded Swiss French, it's going to fall back to just French. And if that doesn't exist, it falls back to the default, which by default is English, but I can set that to be whatever I want. So that's now the fallback if it just can't find locale at all. So what's the difference? Well, in different locales, so like in Swiss French, they show dates differently than short dates differently than in Canada, for example. But these are, I use the long date there. So let me do, so if I just did L, let's see. Yeah, so see in Canada, according to the locale files, I got, they do it that way. And so now it's going to fall back to plain French, and in France, they do it that way. Any questions?
Very cool.
Okay, so, well, this is all wonderful, but that's just dates. What if I want to, I have to deal with multiple languages in the rest of my data? You know, what if I'm saying, so what if I have an appointment database and I want to say, you have, your next appointment is, right? Let's just do that for now. Actually, I can put this format in here. After a bar might help. Okay. Okay, so your next appointment. Okay, so well, obviously, I'm going to want to localize this text, your next appointment is. So what I do is I copy the locale. Locales. And let's Guy, are you still with us? Any French speakers here, or no? There's a German. Any German speakers here?
Nerd ambition.
Yes, a German speaker.
Okay, so
Spanish.
I do have Spanish. So if someone would like to translate in the chat here, your next appointment is or will be into your language, put it in the chat and I will.
I would suggest Spanish because method. Okay, we go.
If someone types into the chat, I'll localize it.
Okay.
I'll show you how I can localize. Okay. Okay, tu proximicita es. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to copy the Spanish locale, put it in my database locales, in my resources locales, in my host database. And then I'm going to go in and edit it. And I can now add whatever strings I want. So let's call this, you can organize your localized messages however you want into as many sub-objects within this. There could be another sub-object. And you can use any basic word characters or a dollar or an underscore. Yeah. So let's make it easy there. Let's say, so next appointment. So let's put this in English first. Come on, get out of the way. All right. Your next appointment is all right. And then in Spanish, it's, oops. Okay. I need space and go back here. And I'm going to load Spanish. And why not? Let's say our default is Spanish. Should load that first. Oh, and also, so now there's load. If I just say load, the locales are cached. And if you want to force it to be updated, so that way you don't have to worry about throughout your code. Like if you can call load as many times as you want, and you don't have to worry about going, incurring the penalty of reloading and reparsing the whole thing. But if you're in development and you want to force it to reload, you just say reload. So let's see. So now, I don't even have to say this. If this is my default locale, I don't have to set it to another locale. It's going to be in Spanish. Now, right now, that's just showing me the Spanish localization. TZ, oh, right, this is not localized, yeah. The date was not localized, so I do have to do that. Oh, I have to set, right. So now there's two ways to do this, okay? So my default locale is yes, but I can also have to set my current locale to Spanish. Now, if you're dealing with multiple languages, there can be a problem with, and you've got preemptive processes that are formatting dates in different languages. This is global, and that you can't necessarily rely on that. But for now, I'm just going to let that be the way it is. Okay. So now we've got the date and the time, and I've got the at. The at was translated localized to alas. But now I need to, how do I change your next appointment to be localized? Well, there is a on locale, there's a function called T for translate. And again, all this was inspired by a library called Vue I18N. And I pretty much sort of implemented most of their API. So this will be 1, that'll be 2. And 1 is going to be T. And then I give it the path to the key, to the value, which will be $.next appointment. Okay. So now if I change to English as the current locale, what happened? Oh, yeah, I have to reload English, right? There we go. Okay. So, well, that's wonderful, but wouldn't it be nice if I could just put the placeholder in here? Well, I can. Why? Because, again, this is all a coherent framework, and internally, T is using, you guessed it, underscore format. So any placeholders in here are going to get replaced. So instead of having to do all this, I actually can do, this can actually go right in here. And then all I have to do is call T. And I don't even $1 because that's exactly what this is. So T, if I pass parameters after the key path, then those become values that get substituted into placeholders, theoretically. Let's see if this works. Pretty sure it will. Yep, it did. So it's changed to Spanish. Oh, what happened? Oh, I have to localize? No. T next appointment, T. Oh, I didn't change it in the Spanish version, right? Yeah, I just need to add that to the Spanish version. There we go. So what about plurals? Any questions? Mind blown yet? Excited? Bored? Asleep? What? Is anyone there?
Well, I
Anyone
think
left?
at some point you might want to highlight just some of the other realms of functionality that are included in the
Okay, well, let me just quickly show plurals, because when you're
Okay.
doing localization, even in English, I mean, in any locale, plurals is a common thing you have to deal with, right? I mean, whenever I see someone say, you know, whenever I see someone not actually dealing with plurals correctly, I'm like, what a lazy programmer. Okay, so so with plurals, we can give it three, by default, 3 different forms. So tell me, Michael, what would be, I need no appointments and 1 appointment.
Okay, I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat. So I'll do it in English while you're doing that. Let's make it clear. This is a so no appointments. 1 appointment. Oops. And count appointments. Waiting. There we go. No tienes. Well,
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 let me
like,
see the context.
the context of you have, you know.
Ah, okay, sorry.
Yeah. like that, yeah.
Hold on, let me see. I'm thinking here. It's
It would be the equivalent of this in Spanish.
Gotcha. All right, hold on. Let me think. Yeah.
So meanwhile, let's do this in English. So let's change this to you have all right, so T appointments. This is count appointments, yeah. So this you have to, and I'm passing to it TC. And then I give it the actual count. That's right. Let me I'll do this just to make it clearer for you what's going on here. And for myself. T dot appoint mints. There we go. Huh? I just changed this morning, so let me do this a different way. Let's see. Just count. There we go. Okay, you have no appointments. Yay. Add a period. Okay, change this to 1. You have 1 appointment, you have 10 appointments. There we go. So that's one way to do it. But this morning I was like, man, it would be so great if I didn't have to do TC. TC stands for translate counted, which is for pluralize. It would be so great if I didn't have to do this separately. And so view I18N has this concept of linked messages, which lets you refer to another message. So I thought, well, let me make a extension of that syntax. So if I say that, and then I give the key path to that, and then the dot afterward, that's gonna be an issue. I just thought of that. I just hacked this together this morning. So so that should work. Because what I do then is now I just need to pass this, and that will get passed through to TC under the hood. Yay. Okay. So yeah, this is going to have to, I'll just have to fix the regex for this so that I can put a period at the end like that. We'll have to do a different syntax. Anyway, I hope you can see. Okay, here, I have the Spanish. Oops. And then not copy. And then this becomes, oh, I see. So it actually has to change significantly. Yeah. So anyway, that's localization. You can put as many strings as you want here. You know, you're going to put in like standard strings like let's say like yes, no, and so on. You know, in Spanish, it's what is it? Is it no?
Yes, it's no.
Yes, it's no. So, so one cool thing is, let me say the answer is oh, that has to be backslashed. There we go. This should theory. So I am, oh, sorry, there's a colon there. So this is a link. This syntax means I'm doing a link to a static, another message. So let's see. There we go. Now, one cool thing is you can do stuff like you can say, there are functions that you can apply to the linked message, and you can even define your own custom functions. To modify, modifiers, it's called modifiers. So yeah, it's like, I hope anyone who's dealing with multiple languages can see how this is going to make your life a lot easier. Because it's like then all of your localization is just defined in text files, which are easy to edit, and then you don't have to change your code to deal with it. Anything else you would like to see? Any questions?
Since we don't have any, since you're not using this on a 4D application right now, Brent is using it, and his will be a client server, right, Brent? You're gonna be using this client server.
Yeah.
Do you foresee, Aparajita, do you foresee any issues with this?
It's just no, I mean, it's a standard component. And so you just have to, what does 4D do? Does 4D copy the components from the server to the client? Yeah, so, you know, it's just a 4D component, and however 4D components work, that's how this will work.
I mean, this is all pure 4D code, so
100% pure 4D, pure
So
4D code, pure, all pure preemptive safe.
so it's not doing, so it's not doing anything that should.
Well,
call
okay,
out
there's
the
one
network.
thing, yes. So datetime, one thing, okay, so datetime, if you are on Windows, and yeah, thanks for coming, Michael. If you're using datetimes and you're on Windows and you want to use time zones, yeah, if you're using datetime, then you have to install Node on each machine that's going to use it.
Oh, wait a minute. Say that you've got to install Node in addition to this?
Yeah,
Hmm,
if you're using daytimes.
darn. That's one of the things I definitely want to use is daytime.
Why is it darn?
Why is there dependency on Node?
Because there's no way for me to get I cannot get on Windows, I cannot get the local time zone information from Windows.
There's no launch nor process terminal command that returns that. Well, what a pain in the ass.
It's the Windows system itself. Without writing a plugin, there's no way to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, trust me, I looked.
Okay.
Yeah, on Mac OS, it's all I use launch process and it's built in, but it's like Node install is like you download this installer, you run it, and that's it. Boom, it's done.
Yes, but if you have, a 50 user site or something or whatever, and you've got to do it on every machine. Anyway, that's an important consideration. And date time class on Windows requires extra work.
It requires a little extra work, but once you've done it, yep. But once they've got that installed, then you don't have to worry about it.
Any other little gotchas, Mac, Windows, back and forth? That's the only one? That's great. It only came down to just a single thing.
That was the only thing, trust me, I tried, but to really get to properly figure out, to properly deal with daytimes, you have to, to deal with time zones.
Yeah.
You have to know your local time zone, and Windows just doesn't tell you from the command line. There's literally no commands you can run, no programs you can run, built into Windows that will give you the time zone abbreviation and the time zone name. So in standard format, and it's like, what can I say?
Maybe we could
See what it actually
there's
returned.
your answer. Oh.
No, not necessarily. No, that's not my answer, because of course, yeah. Because of course it's returning a non-standard time zone name.
Oh, so you'd have to do
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Windows. Yeah, the problem is stupid Windows doesn't have the standard time zone data, doesn't ship with the system. So
Okay.
yeah, that's one of the reasons I had to use Node, because Node comes with the standard time zone data.
People miss out on this initial.
Oh,
If
there we
people,
are.
there it is. If people miss out on this initial,
Yeah, the training will be recorded, of course. So anyone who buys it will,
okay.
I'll upload the recordings, and then anyone who buys it will get the link to the recordings.
Okay, so there'll just be one training session of these 3 days. But if you buy the component, in 3 or 4 months or next year, that's the training you're going to get.
That's the training you're going to get. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
What's the minimum version of 4D that this will run in?
V19 R5.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything before that, it just didn't have the language features that really made this possible.
That's more for everybody else who's on the call. So
Yeah. Yeah, everyone please go vote for I know
try
Brent,
catch.
try catch.
I put that in the chat earlier.
Yeah, please.
I put you a little file in the chat with the available
I
time
know,
zones
but
on Windows.
I know, but these are these are just, I'd have to have a table converting, but this is,
Yes, yes, yes.
but is
Mm.
that all of them?
That's on my system. That's all time
Oh, yeah,
zones
no,
available.
that's like very incomplete.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, this, yeah, I mean, this list is, there's like 500, there's 597 names.
Jiminy Christmas.
Um,
And a lot of them are aliases for the canonical name, but you know, it's like, yeah, I just, it's okay. I'll package the node thing into an executable. Thanks
There
for
are 145 zones in Windows, not more.
145. Those are probably the canonical ones, but I'm not going to spend the time converting these names to the canonical names.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I understand.
Could you get it through PHP?
I tried, but again,
Yeah.
because the PHP version on the PHP
4
version
days out of date.
in 4D doesn't have TZ data either. And even if I ask for the, even though PHP has the calls that should give me the proper time zone abbreviation and name, if you actually execute that on 4D, you get that UTC for both.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Huh.
So it's useless. I tried. Yeah, that was my first thought was, oh, maybe I could use PHP, but no, PHP won't do it. Not the 4D version.
well, might want to take this discussion offline and just I don't know if there is anything else you wanted to show. I mean, the component has so many more.
Yeah, I barely scratched the surface, actually. Even after,
Yeah. But
even the training is going to barely scratch the surface. I mean, it's like I would have to train for 2 weeks.
yeah. I mean, you can.
And your plugin, it has the part for doing the unit testing, and
Yes.
you actually use that to unit test.
Oh
the
God, yeah.
component
Here,
itself.
let me run it. Let's see what happens. Let's see.
I'd like to know that as an example of here's how you use a bunch of example code of doing that.
Yeah.
Is that
here.
Is that Mocha or which one?
Yeah,
was it?
it's a port of, it's Mocha.
Will
Okay.
you be covering that during the training?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So,
good.
so yeah, and I've enhanced it since you last saw it.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so now I've got collapse and expand, and I think it did this before. You can click on a line, it goes right to that test.
Mhm.
Very good, yeah.
I think I had that. But if there's failures, let's say, for example, let me mess that up. And where's another one? Let's do some others. Collapse. The advantage of having this there, okay. So I just made 2 of them fail. Why do I have that? And I added a progress bar. That's also, yeah, new. So 2 of them failed, but you know, one of them could be like way, way, way down. Who knows where it is? So you just press F or click on here, and it shows you just the failures.
Don't we all wish MSC would do that? Jeez.
Yeah.
God.
Yes.
So yeah, and then you know, you look here and you click right on it, takes you right to the test. You see why it failed. Okay, that's that. Run it again. And I also added, like, you can it used to be you had to manually like specify the tests to run, but now by default, I just grab whatever classes are in the test home folder and run all of those. So, but you can have multiple folders if you want. There's a configuration to the runner. You can say include test. So Oh, come on. Oh, yeah. So you can tell it, you can have multiple folders, just comma separated. But not only that, you can put a what's called a glob after the name. Let's say I only want to run anything that starts with _date. Okay, so I only get datetime static and datetime. Or I can use a regular expression. If I end it with a slash, this now becomes a regular expression. And so I want to do any classes that start with underscore and then is either date or Lodash. There we go. Which is great, well, you know, when you're just want to limit your testing. And then you can also limit the test you want to run. So let's say I only want to run get time zone offset. How about now? I only want to run now. All right, so now. There we
Okay,
go.
fine.
Or,
I have a question regarding testing. How do you deal if you want to test access in the database and you create mockup records and so on, and afterwards you want
clean it
to
up. Yeah,
clean
yeah.
it up?
Yeah. So every let's see, I must have this somewhere. Nope. Let's see. Let's try. Yeah, so there's before and before each. So yeah, here we go. So like here, so I'm saying that before I run this entire suite of tests,
Mm-hmm.
I want to unregister this datetime static singleton. And then after I unregister it again, I'm resetting it before I run the test, and I'm resetting it after I run on the tests. There's also before each and after each, which will run before and after each test.
Yes.
So yeah.
Then I can use, for instance, it before start transaction and then cancel transaction. Is this possible?
Before, say it again.
If I do it before and then I call start transaction and it after I call cancel transaction to throw away all the records.
Yeah, I mean, you would say dot before formula start transaction.
Okay, that's possible. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Oh, by the way, here's a cool little utility I added. I don't know if I had it last time. I call this the poor man's multi-line anonymous function. So
you did that. That's what we talked about.
Well, you know, it's poor man's. So I have something called underscore sequence. What sequence does is it just returns, you can pass any number of parameters. And the result of sequence is the result of the last parameter. Now, of course, that parameter, oh yeah. See, this is why I never use 4D's alert. I never have to worry about that. So this could be anything. It could be you could call I'm gonna do say hello, I guess. Let's set foobar .new branch, and this could be say hello. Oops. how do I always get 3 L's in there? Okay.
It's memorized it until you
Yeah.
quit it.
Oh, right, yeah. So, but this is, you can also put formulas in here and they will be called. And so this lets you essentially, so how did I use this? So I actually use this becomes handy in unit testing. So I use it in tests. So for example, so I wanted to test, so oh, by the way, I added a parallel sort for collections. Yay,
Wow.
yay me. That's definitely something useful. And then you got
Yeah.
multiple collections and you want to sort on the first one and have all the rest of them sort along with it. It's not multi-key, it's not multi-level, but it's just parallel. So
It's positional properties or name properties? How does the ones that you're sorting with it are they
I don't know.
are they singleton collections, not
They're all, well, let's see. Can you pass, yeah, no, you can't pass any. You're sorting, oh wait, sort.
so it's not a collection of objects that you're sorting, it's a collection of
No, you're sorting.
long ends or something.
Well, it's just, if they all have to be like, they all have to be the same type.
Okay.
I should actually add a property path somehow. Yeah. That's going to be interesting.
So sorting is done positionally. The first one resort positionally, and then the other ones, they move, all their elements move around based on the position that they were at.
Well, yeah, it's like you've got parallel. It's like sort
Yeah.
arrays.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. It just does them in parallel based on the first one. Yeah. So, anyway, so in my unit test for tests for sort, so I use sequence because so here I'm sorting 2 collections. And then I want to the result, and I want to then see what the second one looks like. So I use sequence. So the first one does the sort. The second one, I just put that in, and then it returns that value. And then that's what's getting compared. That's what's getting past the assertion. I've got some more complex examples. Let's see. Yeah, here's a really complex example. Here's a poor man's multi-line anonymous function. There it is. Pushing an error handler. Yeah, and then getting the method called an error. Yeah. So it's actually quite, so in essence, it's kind of like you can run it's like creating an anonymous function and where you have to pass each line separately as a parameter. Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing we'd like to get. Someday we'll vote on that, but first we need exceptions. Try catch. Anyway, oh, and of course there is a whole as close as I could get to a real error system. This is another real beauty of JS component is that it's got its own integrated error system built in. And so there's a class called cs.js.error. And if we look at what that is, it's an object which I need a message. And so the error, I can also give it a code. So the error object encapsulates an error message, an error code, and it captures the stack at the place that it occurred. And I've got a error handler stack. So you can push separate error handlers, but there's a default error handler that comes with JS component that turns the current error into cs.js.error, and then you can access that. You can see if there was an error, and you can access it by _last error. So the bottom line is anything you run within, any code that's running within JS component that could generate an error uses my standard error handler. So you can check. So if I use parse JSON instead, which will not barf, it just generates a cs.js.error. So now if I do that, there we go. So instead of puking at runtime, you actually get an object which tells you exactly where it happened. There.
Yeah, there's some pretty weird pitfalls sometimes with component work.
Yeah, that was one I was not counting on. Okay, that I'm gonna have to fix somehow. All right, I'm glad we found that out. I did not know that. Yeah.
Good talk.
I have to check on add dates and the dates dealing with daylight savings time, adding to a date dealing with daylight savings time. And this, yeah. You know, I found out like at the last minute, I couldn't subclass component classes. So I had to redesign a whole bunch of classes to work in a different way. It was in the end, it worked out better in some cases. Yeah, but this error system, and of course you can't subclass cs.js.error, unfortunately, but I provide a sort of conventional way of making your own error classes that'll work within the JS component system. Because JS component expects to see an object that looks like a cs.js.error. Doesn't have to be a subclass, but as long as it has the same API, then it'll work fine. So, yeah. So I think that's, unless there's any more questions, I mean, again, I'm just scratching the surface. This will definitely, as I said, as it says right at the top, 100% pure 4D code, 100% preemptive safe, and 100% guaranteed to make you a more effective, more productive, and more happy programmer.
Money can buy happiness.
No.
Happiness guaranteed. Oh, that is tempting.
No, happy programming. In other words, more happier programming, not a happy person, but at least having a happier experience programming in 4D. That I can.
So anyways, these are the links to the component and to Aparajita's site, email address, so long as he doesn't want that edited too.
That's okay. Yeah.
And yeah, again, schedules on the website. Thank you, everybody. Thanks everybody for attending, and thanks Aparajita for round 3. And
yeah, so I hope you can I'm giving people was it 30-day, 90-day money back guarantee. So I think it was 90 days. I think it was 90 days because you'll need 90 days to actually really, dig into it and realize just how incredibly comprehensive it is and how much it's going to do for you. And if after 90 days, you think it's not worth it, it's not going to save you, pay itself back, many times over, then yeah, then
Well, the training is 50% of the price, maybe, or more. I mean,
yeah,
that's a big part of why I want to do it, is the training and the source code, so I can see how you're doing all this stuff. And so I think it's worth it, just because of the training. If it was just, here's the source code and the component, have at it,
Yeah.
I might
well,
say, ooh,
plus the
that's-
documentation,
Yeah.
documentation.
yeah, the documentation is pretty extensive.
Oh, yeah.
Documentation is good. Yeah.
Yeah, but the training added on to it, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, the training is essential to, like with the unit tests, you know, it's like I document all the different classes, but you have to understand how they all fit together and how to create a test hierarchy and get a mental map of how the whole thing works. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. So
All right. Well, thanks for the sneak peek, and yeah, looking forward to seeing more about it. And thanks everybody for attending. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it off here, but you don't have to leave. So see you guys in the next meeting.
hey, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Uh,
Thanks a lot.
Give it a
Let's
try.
see. Whoops,
you.
got to where'd my Zoom go? There we are.